To complete this 1-2 punch combination, let's call up Josh Williams as our next speaker. He is the co-founder and president of BW Research. He's been leading and directing applied economic research since before the turn of the century. Is that correct? I love that phrase. Work focusing on supporting decision makers with evidence-based conclusions. We like that, and recommendations. And you are, sir, responsible for directing economic and workforce research, public opinion studies, market research studies, and you're also the Applied Research Director of Economic Advancement Research Institute, a nonprofit focusing on issues and challenges related to economic mobility, sustainability, we like that word, and vitality. Josh, come on up. Thanks.
Thanks, sir. I really appreciate all we got to hear from Mark, just because it's nice to set the table. He really brings on the kind of the national issues, and I really get the honor and privilege to really focus on North County. So let's see. Look at that. This is a foreshadow of next year. We will probably, I was talking to Kim Thorner this morning, we may spend some time on water and water-related issues next year if any of my forecasts are at all correct. This is actually, I think, about to keep us looking. So with that, we will jump right into it. This year, we did something a little differently. So our definition of North County isn't quite as broad as Supervisor Roberts. It doesn't go all the way down to the 8. We're looking at basically the areas of, and we split North County really in what we're going to call 4 subregions, going from Camp Pendleton down to Del Mar, really thinking about the 56 as kind of the southern boundary, and that as that goes east across, and then all the way up into the northeast corner of the county. Why focus on North County? Why would we spend this much time? I mean, not only is it where we live and where we work and where we play, but if you looked at North County on its own, it would be the 43rd largest state in the country. It has a greater population than 8 states. It has more economic output than 8 states. And really, one of the defining characteristics is its strong or its high industry concentration of key industry clusters, including the biotechnology and biomedical devices, clean technology, and sports and active lifestyle. And we'll talk about some of those others later on. But this is a big region, and one of the challenges, and I'm not going to spend too much time talking about labor market data and how we split up, but this is a big region, and it's hard to get data on North County because it's not even its own county. So part of what we did is we tried to kind of split up that data that you can only get at a county level. So why are we doing this? What's driving what we're working on today? I want to give you some data on North County's economy, what we've learned from different indicators, but more importantly, I want to help kind of drive a discussion about what are the challenges and opportunities facing the region. What are the things that we need to be talking about as businesses, as decision makers, as those that are invested in planning our community? What are those challenges and opportunities we should be looking at? And really, I think one of the kind of the central themes that drives the research that we do is how's the world of work changing? How's the world of work changing for educators and students that are looking to move into it? How is it for businesses that are investing? And as elected officials and decision makers, how do we really allocate those resources, thinking about how to support that world of work? So let's look at the economy. One of the first things that, and Mark already hit on this, but North County was hit harder by the recession, and you can look at from 2007 to 2010, we're that little blue line. We were hit harder than the rest of San Diego County, but one of the things, if we look at the last 4 years, from 2010 to 2014, we've actually recovered stronger in terms of total employment. And that's important, and we'll go into why that is. But one of the things I want to spend a lot of time on is, while the number of jobs are important, the quality of the jobs really are more important. And Mark talked a little bit about that in terms of underemployment and full-time jobs. We're going to segment that even a little further. One of the things, if we look at, and this is one of the new things that we did this year, we spent a lot of time looking at subregions, we can see that even North County, which is only, represents about a third of San Diego County's entire economy, there's different things going on. Just like in California, where the Bay Area has had really strong growth, Central Valley has seen, very little recovery from the Great Recession. we can see that North Central Coast, North Coast, and North Central Inland have all grown and increased jobs from 2007, whereas Northern Inland has actually lost jobs and is still about 6% below where its employment levels were in 2007. And we can talk about the reasons for that, but a lot of that deals with the profile of industries, the type of industries that are each of these subregions. It deals with the demographic kind of profile of the region and kind of what we call the labor force participation rates. And it looks at the concentration of some of those industry clusters that have recovered. One of the things that I want to get you to think about is we've developed this kind of approach to looking at jobs. And jobs can kind of fit into three categories. Tier 1 jobs are typically your professional positions. These are positions that typically require a 4-year degree. And in average in North County, they earn about $92,000 a year. In the Tier 2 jobs are your middle skill, middle wage jobs. If we looked at the economy 30 years ago, these represented 80% of the jobs in the country and in California. Today, that number is about 40%. When you talk about economic mobility and economic inequality, the issue really is, we can talk about it from a political perspective, but I would argue it's really about this job profile and really what employers are demanding in terms of work. Lastly are your Tier 3 jobs. These are your lower skilled, typically your service positions, and these typically pay $23,000, $24,000 a year. And if we look at just in terms of indicators, if we look at wage growth in these three tiers, and this is in North County, over the last year, Tier 1 jobs saw average wage increases by $1,600. Tier 2 saw average wage increases annually about $600. And our Tier 3 jobs only saw an increase of about $200. And this is in a kind of a recovering economy. So this kind of segmentation gives you a sense of some of the challenges we're facing. From an educational perspective, your Tier 1 positions typically require a 4-year degree or more. Your Tier 2 jobs typically require some kind of training above high school, typically a certificate or some sort of training beyond a high school diploma, but something beyond there. And then the Tier 3 typically may only require a high school diploma or sometimes even less than that. And one of the really, I'd say, the good news and one of the strongest kind of bits of positive information I have for you is North County, unlike other regions that I've done this type of work in California, its #1 job grower over the last 7 years, 8 years, has been Tier 1 jobs. From 2010 to 2014, they've grown by 10%. And I will say, another county I did this study, their #1 job grower was Tier 3 jobs. So this is not always the case. And in fact, in California, one of the challenges we're facing is our Tier 3 jobs are growing faster than our Tier 1 jobs. That's not the case in North County. And one of the things we need to think about too, and I'll get into this more later, North County's economy is transitioning. It's transitioning from one that was more of a bedroom community, that was really focused on population-serving industries, to more export-oriented, innovative, really these industry clusters that are driving our growth. And we'll connect the dots a little bit. But I think if there's really one good news, the job recovery numbers is nice, and I think it's important. But to me, as somebody, and I will say one of the real joys of doing this is I actually live here and I work here, and this is, so it's very close. So if I sound passionate about it, I tend to be passionate about this everywhere, but I'm more passionate about it here. Because this is, I think, one of the best numbers that we can hang our hat on, is these Tier 1 jobs are growing, and they're growing faster here than they are in the rest of San Diego County, and they're growing considerably faster than even our neighbors just to the north, Orange County and Riverside. So the question then becomes why? Why is that? And so if you could ask questions, hopefully somebody would ask that question. Let me jump right into why I think that is. So Mark gave us a lot of good data on kind of traditional industries. And so traditional industries are that professional science and technical services, manufacturing, financial activities. The problem with that is employers, a manufacturer can be somebody that's brewing beer, can be a tortilla bakery, and it can be somebody that's producing and manufacturing satellites, right? They have very different needs in terms of the type of workers that they need, in terms of their investment that they're looking for, in terms of their real estate needs. So what industry clusters do is they basically say, hey, we're going to look at industries by the way employers really look at industries. So it allows us to segment the economy and really engage employers and businesses more effectively. But it's also important, I think, for educators and for those that are looking at training, because this is a way of looking at skills and developing and identifying career pathways. If we're going to connect the world of work and education to jobs, industry clusters give us a better approach and kind of a better pathway for that. But I think ultimately the reason we focus on industry clusters is in North County, they represent about 34% of all our jobs. But if you look at the last 3 or 4 years, they represent over half of where the new jobs are. That number's only going up and only will continue to grow up. This is the kind of the dynamic component of North County's economy. And in some ways, we can say that about California. In terms of this is where the good jobs are, this is where the dynamic growth is. So the North County's industry clusters, biotechnology and biomedical devices. This is very closely aligned with life sciences. So when you hear life sciences, that's really the life sciences industry. Clean technology. This is renewable energy, energy efficiency. New technologies are looking to use and develop energy in a more efficient manner. ICT, this is a kind of a newer way of saying kind of high technology industries. These are the Viasats, the Qualcomms that are developing new products. North County is particularly known for its sports and active lifestyle manufacturers. The golf firms that Gene is so loyal to, the surfboard manufacturers, the skateboards, the apparel that's all connected to that. We've developed connected tourism and agriculture, and really what we're doing is we're connecting the dots between the tourism and the resources that come here, but the breweries and some of the wineries that are right on our border in the northeast quadrant, as well as some of the local organic farms and agriculture that supports those restaurants and some of those beverage manufacturers. Healthcare, and we'll talk about the importance of healthcare, and building and design. And the key thing of these industry clusters, except for the bottom two, except for healthcare and building design, and we'll argue that healthcare and building design are critical components for quality of life. The top 5 that I talked about, though, they're export-oriented. And that's a really nice way of saying they bring in money and revenue from outside the region. And that's really important. Because otherwise, if you're just focusing on population-serving industries, at the end of the day, it's very hard to grow. Your growth is only tied to the number of people that live in your region. And then that's another reason why these clusters are important. So this is for the geeks out there, so this is a pretty exciting chart, but really what this shows here is on the vertical axis, we show the industry concentrations in comparison to the nation. So for example, clean technology and biotechnology and biomedical devices, those one in kind of the top, we have 2 to 3 times to 4 times the national average in terms of employment. These are the industries that really define and make us unique. Sports and active lifestyle manufacturing, 125 times or more than twice the national average. And the horizontal axis really shows the growth. So one of the interesting things we see is those industries that we're or we have the highest concentration of, clean technology, biotechnology, and biomedical, those are the ones that have really grown robustly, over 15, 20% in the last 3 to 4 years. And again, that's really the drivers. If we look at their occupational profile, clean technology and biotechnology and biomedical, over 75% of their jobs fall in that tier 1 segment. As they grow, they really drive those quality, high-paying jobs that are in a region. Another area we spend a lot of time on, and I'd like to take this time to thank Ryan and Veronica for all their hard work on this, but we went through all the patent data in North County. Spent a lot of time looking at it and delving into it. And one of the things that, just from a big picture perspective, that dark blue line is San Diego County. San Diego County right now is the number 2 county in the country for patent activity and new patents. So anybody know the number 1? I will give... one of my, anybody know the number 1 county is? Santa Clara. I hear some smart people out there. Yeah, Silicon Valley. So, and I'll be honest, Santa Clara dwarfs everyone else. But if we look at where the inventors are, so we went through and actually looked at these patents. I know this sounds pretty mundane, and it wasn't the most exciting work, but the outcome was interesting. 40% of the patent activity are from people that live in North County. If North County's inventors, so yeah, I guess that is exciting. Let me see, I think I've got if North County inventors were their own county, they would be the 9th most active county in the country for patent activity. We would compare to Orange County as a whole. So the population in North County is about 1.2 million. The population in Orange County is about 3.5, 3.6. Our patent activity is equal to Orange County's. And if we want to talk about, really why we're transitioning from kind of a population-serving bedroom community to a more innovative, export-oriented economy, it's really a lot of that's being driven by that innovative activity, those patents and that activity. One of the other things that's interesting that as you look at the data, you see we have more talent in North County than we do have businesses, and that's changing. But one of the things we see when we look at the patent data by inventor origin, where the inventors are, they're in North County. But if we look at the businesses, still more of them are really down in Sorrento Valley and just south of our border. And that's changing over time, but we represent about, the patent activity, North County represents about 25% of San Diego County by business, but we represent about 40 to 42% by inventors. So the brains tend to live here, but a lot of them are going south or even sometimes even going up north and working for companies that do that. So I've got some more details if we're interested, but let's talk about that as well. So patent activity is an important kind of output, but another thing we can look at in terms of innovation activity is overall investment. And the yellow represents kind of the rest of San Diego County, the blue, and I don't know why those are Charger colors, but maybe that was subliminal, I'm not sure. Hopefully some new free agents today. Anyway, we're seeing that overall investment in North County has been going up, and it represents about 25% of all the reported investment in the county. But one of the interesting things is we're starting to see, and this is kind of a good harbinger moving forward, the startup investment is up about 37%, 38% in North County. So we're seeing more seed and venture capital and early investment capital in North County, and it's growing. Represents about $500 million total, and we really see it in two industries. We see it in the biotech and kind of healthcare-related industries, and we see it in ICT. And this is good because ICT really kind of has seen some declines in overall employment in North County over the last few years. But we're seeing kind of a reburgeoning of investment and some patent activity that would lead me to believe that over the next few years that employment will grow. So I think, we've talked about some of the economy, we've talked about some of the innovative activity, but the people in the place really are what drive it. We can see in terms of, we're talking about 1.2 million people. One of the challenges, too, is we do have a larger population of individuals under the age of 18. That represents about a quarter of our population, and individuals that are 55 and older. And why does that matter? It's exciting in the sense that we're having a growing student population, but it will be challenging. And I think they talked about succession planning and the idea of new workers. We're going to see a lot of our workers and the people that live and work in North County are going to be retiring over the next year. And we've been so focused on this loose labor market and getting people jobs. We could quickly find that finding qualified talent and finding the workers that we need for our businesses is going to be a much bigger challenge moving forward and something we need to think about. And we'll jump into that. In terms of educational attainment, we tend to be a more educated community. So 38% of adults over the age of 25 have a 4-year degree or more. So the California average is about 30%. So we're about 7 to 8% higher than California average. But if we look at back at our map and we looked at the regions, North Central Coast, Del Mar, Solana Beach, 63% of adults have a 4-year degree or higher. I do a lot of work in Silicon Valley, and Silicon Valley likes to say how they're the most educated community in the world. That number blows away Santa Clara County by about 20%. So that educational attainment is very high and particularly high in that North Central Coast. And not surprising, that's where a lot of those inventor origins tend to be as well. But we also have at the other end of the spectrum, we have a relatively large portion of our population that has a relatively low level of educational attainment. We tend to be a little bifurcated. So we have a lot of people with 4-year degrees and graduate degrees, but in North Inland, 21% have less than a high school diploma, 40% have a high school diploma as their highest level of education. And so that, again, it creates a challenge because you tend to be, like I said, you tend to be a little high on both sides and not have that kind of mid-level of education. One of the things that we like to look at and we think is important, and particularly, the returns on education have never been higher. Somebody with a 4-year degree right now, their level of unemployment is about 4%. Somebody whose level of education, their highest level, high school diploma, is 15, 16%. I can get into wages, but the type of degree matters as well. Somebody in engineering, their typical starting wage of 4-year degree is $75,000. STEM, so everybody knows STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math degrees. We've been tracking and following the completions of 2-year and 4-year STEM degrees in North County. And the absolute number has been going up slowly, but we represent only about 1% of total STEM degrees conferred in the state. And that's a challenge because we have these high-tech industries that are demanding degrees in engineering, that are demanding degrees in material sciences, yet we represent a little over 3% of the population, but we're only producing 1% of the regions. And one of the things that, or 1% of the STEM degrees, one of the things that I would challenge us as a region is, and I know and we looked at the data, and yes, UCSD and San Diego State does produce a lot, and USD, and there's some good schools south of us, but one of the challenges is employers to do internships, to really connect new students into their businesses. I had a student intern for me from San Diego State. It wasn't great because she spent all her time driving, right? I mean, I know we're one county, but so what I'm saying is this is a challenge, and I think this is something that businesses need. They need more of these STEM degrees conferred or produced in North County. Household income, I can spend a lot of time on this data, but we tend to have a higher level of income when we compare either the rest of San Diego County or California. That the blue represents, the low income, and we tend to be higher at both 75 to 150 and 150 or more. This is an important finding. This is kind of the last before I jump into my conclusions. The blue represents the North County workforce. These are the people that live here and work anywhere, right? The yellow represents the people that work in North County, right? So one of the things, even with our industry clusters, the numbers on each of the jobs, the service occupations, the sales and office, the natural resource, the production, they're pretty even. We actually are bringing in workers for some of the construction and trades and transportation jobs. But we still export about 90,000 of these tier 1 professional, these management, business, science, and occupations to just south in Sereno Valley or up north into Orange County and Riverside. And from the traffic data, we think most of it is in that Sereno Valley region. So we are the important talent that really drives the county and a lot of that patent activity. This is a challenge that we need to look at. And the rental population, I think Mark touched on this in terms of home ownership, rental population or percentage of households in North County has increased. But one of the big challenges is, and back 100 years ago, the price of food was a big indicator of how wealthy you were. How much of your income that you spent on food really indicated how wealthy. If it was a small percentage, that means you had great wealth. If it was a large percentage of your income, you were probably pretty poor. In this day and age, really, housing is the driver of kind of where we're at in terms of our wealth. And if you're spending over 35% of your income on housing, that becomes a challenge, and there's issues with that. And one of the things we're seeing, and we've seen this number get worse over the last 2 years, is 49%, just about half of our renters spend 35% or more of their income on housing. And there's challenge with housing affordability, and this is an impact on the economy, because if we want to develop tier 2 jobs and we want to develop opportunities for people to work and live in the area, that number needs to come down. That's a high number, and it's a high number even when we compare it to other regions within the state. We haven't spent a lot. So we've seen increases in employment. We're also seeing a real increase in demand for commercial real estate, whether it's office, whether it's industrial or retail. We've seen average office rents and average office inventories increase. That doesn't make sense, right? If inventory increases, right, holding all the things constant, price should go down. But demand is so strong that even as inventories have increased, so have the prices. And even considerably more so when we compare it to the rest of San Diego County. So again, another harbinger of economic activity is really growing in North County as we look at this data, and we can delve more into that. We can see some of the rents. The rents are increasing more so in the North Central Coast, but they've gone up in North Coast as well. The inland, kind of like all of California, hasn't seen as large of increase as the coastal regions within North County. So what does all this mean? I've thrown a lot of data at you, and one of the things I do in a presentation, I give you 45 minutes worth of data in a 20-minute conversation. That's one of the values I bring to this. Just kidding. Most of you can't. Yeah, anyway, we'll jump right on to that. Industry clusters are playing an increasingly important role in North County's economy. They represent 34% of jobs in North County compared to 28% of the rest of San Diego County. So if we're talking about these key industry clusters, we point out North County is really their home in most cases. The quality of occupations is improving. When I talk about it, I really talk about those tier 1 and tier 2 jobs. And they've grown faster in North County since 2010 than elsewhere, whether we're looking at the county or even the Southern California region. And employment data, but really the commercial real estate indicators, I think, are important indicators that North County's really gone beyond the post-recession economy. And I think one of the things I want to challenge you today, I think Mark had a great quote, we're not going the same place we were. And we need to start thinking about our economy beyond just the post-recession economy. My hope is next year I can come back and talk to you, and I won't be comparing our numbers to 2007 and 2010. We need to be looking at some of the challenges that we'll be facing beyond that. But I think North County, like California and the country as a whole, hasn't seen consistent growth across all of its subregions. North County Inland has not seen job growth since 2007, while the other three subregions have. Again, we talked about the STEM degrees and the challenge that face. Let's talk about some of the opportunities and some of the challenges. I mean, one of the good news is we do have this strengthening economy, but with the strengthening economy, there are challenges. We are seeing housing affordability become an issue. Traffic and congestion, costs to small businesses will continue to be a problem as rents and some of the fundamental costs of doing business increase because of the warming of the economy. Water prices, regulations, and availability, and we don't have great data on this, but we can starting to see the dominoes fall in terms of water. And I was talking to Kim. This is going to be an important panel next year, I'm afraid. We're going to be talking about water, and we're also going to be talking about the relationship. I mean, one of the things that Carlsbad has is the desalination plant, which is really exciting, but what's the challenge with desalination? It's very energy intensive. And some of you might tell me about the increasing costs of electricity being a challenge as well. And the uncertainty. And then really the uncertainty and the volatility is something that really can have a negative impact on business. And that's my concern moving forward. And dealing with that resource scarcity is something that we as a region need to start thinking about and talking about and planning about. We don't want to wait 4 or 5 years until it's really bad, then, okay, we need to come up with a plan. It's probably a discussion that we need to start today. Quality of life is an increasingly valuable asset for regional economic vitality. We spend a lot of time talking to businesses. We do surveys, focus groups, executive interviews. And one of the challenges is kind of the old school way is you had kind of quality of life versus business. You know, are you for business vitality or for quality of life? And I think that's a bad balancing act because ultimately businesses come in North County because they want to live here. Quality of life drives economic vitality. And I think there are challenges and we do need a plan, but the resources for tourism and recreation really are one of the things when we ask business entrepreneurs, why are you where you're at? It's because I want to live here. I want my kids to go to a good school, and I want to be able to go out and jump in the ocean or play golf or climb mountains right next to my backyard. So I think we're seeing that in our discussions with businesses, and I think that's something that we need to think about in North County as kind of a key asset in terms of our economic planning. One of the challenges that we will face is we do have an older population. We are seeing labor force participation rates drop. We are seeing churning in the economy. We're also dealing with technologies that are always moving. Wow, what a challenge. Think about if you're the principal at a high school is trying to figure out, okay, how do I prepare these people for the world of work, right? One of the biggest challenges that we face, and particularly in North County, is how do we do a better job of preparing students and job seekers for these jobs that are always changing, that the skills today are probably antiquated in 3 or 4 years. And we need to think about how we deal with that. Particularly, given the industry profile that we have. And I think ultimately the thing that we need to think about, how is North County's transition from a population-serving economy to a more innovative, export-oriented economy, how will that change? And will these industry clusters that I pointed out, will they be the same ones 3 or 4 years now? How will they change? How do we continue to support them to continue to drive our economic development? I think one of the things that San Diego North EDC, and they have a new 501c3 that is really focusing on, Karen, I've already screwed up. What's the name of the new 501c3 that's focusing on these issues? Thank you, Karen. I appreciate that. I can't see you, but that's a great voice. One of the big challenges that we see in the data is this ability to deal with the world of work and developing the next generation. We have a large portion that's retiring. We have these new technologies that are demanding new skills. How do we develop that? How do we partner with educators and training programs and internships and develop skills beyond just a degree? A 4-year degree is a great thing, and everybody who doesn't have one should go and get one, but it doesn't really teach you how to work, teach you how to learn, right? There's lots more to it than just going and getting your 4 degree and jumping into your job as an engineer for one of these important businesses. Developing North County's regional identity and working collaboratively. I mean, North County needs to be its own place, but we're also connected to Southern California. How do we do both of those things? I think that's a challenge that we're facing. Really, the region's infrastructure, and as we talk about infrastructure, we're talking about water, we're talking about housing, we're talking about transportation, we're talking about power, we're talking about broadband. You know, how do we develop these things to meet the needs of businesses and residents moving forward? And really, how do we track the region's innovation economy and the needs of its industry clusters, and as they change, how do we respond to it? So these are some of the questions I have for you. We're changing it this year. You're not asking me questions, I'm asking you questions. So I expect some good responses and some good solutions to those in the next 15 minutes. Thank you very much for your time.
We will be taking a break shortly, but by popular request, we are inviting Mark Vittner back up for a Q&A session. I'm going to grant 3 wishes, 3 questions, make them good. We've got microphones that will be deployed here in the audience. And gentlemen, yes, young lady? What about the stock market?
It's hurting today. I've peaked a little. The stock market is what's got the stocks unnerved today is the people are worried about what is a strong dollar going to mean to U.S. companies that sell a lot overseas, and they'll transition to that. It in the short term that hurts a little bit, but it's a very short term blip. The other is that with the Fed likely to raise rates in June, all the interest-sensitive stocks that have done very well, if they're REITs or any type of the master limited partnerships, all those things that had boomed, they're all getting hurt a little bit. So it's a really noise, but it can hurt. I mean, it's really painful when you look at it and you see the market come down for a couple of days. But stronger economic growth should be good for corporate profits. It should be good for the market over the next couple of years.
Okay, Josh, you want to step in here and hold on. We're gonna save one for you. A microphone is going over here to this gentleman. All right, Josh.
Thank you. My name is Bora Winkel. I'm the president of the Building Industry Association of this county. To the economists of Wells Fargo, you started to say that we have a supply problem of housing, but then you didn't go into the reason why we have a supply problem. I'll let you answer the question, and I'll give you my unvarnished opinion right thereafter.
It is so much more difficult to take raw land and develop it today. It was the same case in the cycle that we had previously. I had written about that early on in the housing bubble days about how land use policy had contributed to the housing bubble, because by making it more difficult to introduce land into development, it meant that the lead times between when a project was announced and when a home was delivered were longer. And given that the math, given the way that the market worked, people had to put relatively little down on a home in order to buy a new home, and they were able to flip it sometimes twice before it got built. And that contributed to the bubble. We don't have that today because the mortgage process doesn't allow that to happen, so that's a good thing on that end. But it's become more difficult to develop land, and I don't have a solution for you, but I can tell you that if you look around the country and you see what areas do have housing supply coming online, they tend to be areas that have lots of land that are in relatively attractive places, and there are not a whole lot of them, but that seems to be the number one holdup. But go ahead and let me know if I didn't hit it right there.
You went about quarter way. Thank you, though. So here's the answer. We can't get our projects approved. We can't get out of the entitlement pipeline. San Diego pulled 6,600 permits last year, over half of which were just the city. The rest of the county is not issuing building permits. That's about 1/2 of natural demand for permits at 12,000 units a year. That's our problem. Our problem is that the average cost of a house for sale or for rent to build today in San Diego, 40% on the dollar goes to governance cost alone, and that's our problem. But we'll keep at it. Thank you very much.
Okay, there was a question right here. Yes, young lady, and project.
You haven't been able to spend much time about the importance of transportation, but how significant, in your opinion, is air travel to the San Diego and North County markets, both domestic and globally?
I will say there's two ways. Let's look at both the commercial transportation. So one of the things we looked at, kind of these industry clusters, the need to kind of export products. So the ability to be able to sell products abroad was important, and I think that was something that we heard from particularly some of the manufacturers. Their ability to get products, through a North County hub would be really valuable. But yeah, I mean, I think there's a clear. You're seeing traffic times in general increasing, and you're seeing that as the economy improves, that's only going to get worse. My concern is that you're going to see new businesses that may not want to come, that are very export oriented, that are focused on getting products out, that may not want to come here because the transportation, particularly on products, is challenging. But even for the talent, getting their people here is getting more and more challenging. So I think there's an impact on both the business community and residential in terms of getting workers to jobs. Did that kind of answer your question? Okay. Mark, you want to add to that at all? Okay.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, everybody, for your patience. Let's take an official 10-minute timeout while we review the replays. Food, beverages out there, and please rejoin us. We've got some targeted panels coming up, and I think you'll want to stick around for those. Thank you.